Hey, and welcome back. This is Needed Conversations with Ryan and Viktoriya Cole. Thanks for joining us for today's episode as we continue our series on 7 habits of an intentional marriage or intentional couple.
That's right. We've had some great conversations the last couple of weeks. We learned that the first habit of an intentional couple is that they have built their marriage on a common mission. And so you want to go back and listen to that episode, as well as last week, where we talk about intentional couples. They are very purposeful about how they allocate their household responsibilities. And we gave some really practical strategies on how to do that so that you can get into the right rhythm with your spouse. It's all about making sure that you and your spouse are matching rhythms in every season. And that means when you move into a different season, that you adjust those rhythms to whatever circumstances you find yourself in or whatever that season of life may bring, right? Whether having kids, your kids go off to school, you're an empty nester, whether it's starting a new job, going to another state, whatever it is, whatever that catalyst is for the seasonal change, you got to have a strategy to make sure that your rhythms are synchronized as a couple. That's what we talked about last week. And this week, we are talking about the third aspect of an intentional couple, which is the fact that they prioritize quality time, that they prioritize investing in quality time. And this is going to be a very important conversation because when we say quality time, that means a lot of different things for a lot of different people. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to give you some date ideas that are very inexpensive and creative. And so you can have no excuses for as to why you're not having quality time with your spouse. And so that's what this series is all about, is helping you to be more intentional with your marriage so that you have a healthy, thriving relationship.
Yeah, and it's all made up of small little habits. We're noticing this ourselves. One of the things that we kind of caught on to this season is adjusting our diet. And we've had to intentionally track what we're eating. And we're like, I can't believe we didn't even think that we are snacking constantly and adding on to our calories. So it's just like that, where you have to make that intentional step and actually write certain things down or make sure you're strategic. And then over time, it becomes second nature and your body adjusts as well. So it's the same with quality time. Once you kind of get those little habits in place, it'll become second nature and you won't even have to think about it.
You have to step back and examine your relationship.
Yeah.
You have to examine every facet of it and ask yourself, are we doing the best that we can with what we've been given? And everybody has different means in different seasons of life, different financial means, different time constraints. And you can get creative within those constraints to make sure that you have quality time with your spouse. But guess what? Before we continue on in this conversation, I want to stop and break. And if you've been listening here for the last few minutes, that means you're a loyal listener. And we want to make a special announcement to you first before we make it to anybody else. So if you're catching this episode right as it's launched, you will have found out that we are officially rolling out registration for our marriage getaway. It's going to happen September 1st and 2nd. It's Labor Day weekend. It's a Friday night and it's all day Saturday. And it's called the Forevermore Marriage Getaway. It's going to be phenomenal, right?
Yeah, I'm very excited. It's going to be really phenomenal.
We filmed some commercials today on site at the Hotel Heartness, where we're going to be hosting it. It's like a European,
Chateau.
yes, it's a European chateau in the backyard of Greenville, South Carolina. So whether you're listening to this from anywhere in the world, you can fly in. It's 5 miles from the airport. There's airport transportation, and we've negotiated a rate at the hotel of
Yeah.
$169 per night. It's unbelievable. It's like half of the normal rate.
It's a 4-star hotel, you guys.
Yeah.
So you're going to get a really luxurious experience. There's robes in the room, luxurious sheets. You're going to have a really good breakfast. I mean, they have farm fresh eggs.
And the
Actually,
breakfast is included.
yeah, and it's included in your 169 price. So it's a really good deal.
And we have that commercial and footage coming out soon, if not already, so that you can have a sneak peek at what you're going to be experiencing. And if you're in the upstate of South Carolina, you can come to the conference and you can drive in every day if you want to. But because we've negotiated that rate so low, why don't you have a staycation? Get away from the mundane, everyday noise of life and step into an oasis that's just a few miles down the road. You will be amazed. It's a 150-acre property with lakes and bike
Hiking
trails,
trails,
hiking
bike trails,
over
yep.
15 miles of hiking and biking trails. There is a pool that will be open during
It's
our event.
heated,
It's
so
wonderful. Fire pits, just a beautiful courtyard. And guess what? For only $279, that's the cost of registration for the both of you. So that includes you and your spouse, $279. You're going to get a Friday night reception. You're going to get a Saturday night formal banquet dinner. And then you're going to get all of the teaching sessions, workbooks, photo opportunities. You're going to get worship. We're going to have a live worship band. You're going to get personal ministry time, alone time with your spouse. It's going to be an incredible experience that you don't want to miss. Before we say any more, let's give you the place to register, forevermoregetaway.com. Remember that, forevermoregetaway.com. And we're letting you know first because there is limited space. We only can accept a certain number of couples because of the size of the facility, and we definitely want to keep it an intimate experience. But here's the other thing: the first 50 couples to register for this event will be enrolled in a giveaway. What are we giving away?
a 60-minute couples massage, and there's a spa on site, so you can actually use it then, or if you're local, if you wanted to come back another time and use it, you definitely are welcome to do that. But if you register or reserve a room in the hotel as well, you'll be entered in twice. So twice the chances of winning this 60-minute couples massage.
Regardless, whether you win that or not, this is an event that you do not want to miss. It's going to be, again, Labor Day weekend, September 1st and 2nd. So mark your calendars now for the Forevermore Marriage Getaway. And the reason why we're having this event is so many times it's hard for couples to plan
Mhm.
to have quality time like we're talking about today. But with this, there's no excuse. We're helping you out with the meals. If you're staying on site, you get breakfast, you get a gourmet dinner on Saturday night, you get some slow dancing time with your spouse, some one on one FaceTime, get to walk hand in hand down these beautiful hiking trails. It's truly an opportunity for you to say, I don't even have to think about it. Let me register, pay my 279, book my room, and you're done. And come and be with us for an extraordinary time, a transformational time for your marriage.
Yeah, I always think of and I'm fascinated how much money people spend on weddings. But then afterwards, they kind of always kind of hesitate to invest in their marriage, but it's so important. I remember we just took a getaway trip to it's like an hour away and it was somewhere in the woods. It's like glamping, fancy glamping. And it was so refreshing. We literally spent, I think, what, 2 days?
Mm.
And it was just quiet and serene. We did fire, and cooked on the fire, and it was different. It was different, and we were able to slow down and spend quality time together alone with the kids and just be able to think through and dream together. So when we came back, we felt so refreshed and we're ready to go to, hit the ground running. So maybe it's something that you really need is just those 2 days. And on top of that, I think it's awesome to connect with other healthy couples, especially locally here. That way you don't feel like you're alone.
And staying at that tiny cabin, it was a great experience, but it was around $350. If you count in the food that we had to buy to go and prepare there,
Yeah.
you're talking about closer to $400, a little bit more. And with this, you're getting all of that plus more. You're getting meals, you're getting a four-star accommodation, you're getting wonderfully comfortable beds. You're really not gonna have to think about anything when you get there. It's gonna be a staycation like no other staycation if you're in the upstate of South Carolina. So make sure you register right now, forevermoregetaway.com. If you wanna know how to be an intentional couple, prioritize investing in quality time. You have to invest in quality time. This is one of those opportunities. But that's also the point of our podcast episode today, intentional quality time. When most people think about quality time, they think about the duration of time. That means we need to spend more time together. But what if I told you that it wasn't about the amount of time that you're spending with your spouse that matters? It's about how intentional you are with the time that you have. So if you really only have an hour or two with your spouse a day, making the most of it is going to be important so that you're not just sitting on opposite ends of the couch scrolling on social media or watching YouTube videos, which we're all guilty of. You
Mhm.
know, it's sort of like this hidden secret that all couples are struggling with right now, unless you're one of those saints who absolutely does not use a cell phone or social media, which I, if we were able to, we would.
Yeah.
This ministry requires that we use social media. And there are times when we have to say to ourselves, we need a digital detox. And we've
Mm.
been purposeful about putting that phone down. Even the simple act of when I'm sitting at a dinner table with my spouse and my family, if the phone is present, the phone is face down, turned off, ringer off, all of that. So you don't see the little flashing sign if you've got that. So many of you have notifications out of the wazoo,
Mm.
and you need to cut off some of those
Right.
notifications.
Unsubscribe.
Unsubscribe, put some limitations on the times that you're able to spend on certain apps. I know for me, I put limitations on some of my apps, and when I go over it, if I still need to be on that app, I can, bypass it, but it takes several clicks, but it's a good reminder that, whoa, I've already bypassed X amount of time on this app today. And so just those little things can help you ensure that the time that you are spending with your spouse is quality. There's power in intentionality in your relationship. Relationships, if they are going to be healthy, require time, they require money, an investment of money, and they require intentionality. And it doesn't have to be a lot of money, but it has to be some level of investment that you're making in the relationship on a consistent basis.
I mean, there's a reason they say put your money where your mouth is, because oftentimes we say, I love you and, you're important to me. But oftentimes when it comes to our wallets, we're like skimping out on our spouse or skimping out on spending that quality time because we think, well, we could use it over here. But honestly, if you don't have your relationship in the right order and your spouse doesn't feel like you're prioritizing them, then are you even living your life? And are you ever going to feel supported by your spouse when your spouse is begrudging you because they feel like you're putting emphasis and importance on other things besides them, you know?
Right.
2 is better than 1. It's always better to walk together hand in hand because your spouse sees things that you may not see. But if you both are feeling disconnected because you are not spending that quality time, then you're going to start seeing and having more of those outbursts and arguments. You're going to start seeing things, pop up and like, I don't know where this is coming from. And it's usually an indication that your spouse is feeling disconnected from you and you need to spend quality time, whether it's sitting at the table and having a conversation and sharing a meal uninterrupted without your phone, or actually having a getaway of some sort in order to reconnect.
Yeah. Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 says, don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. This is a scripture that you should remember. 6:21. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. This is important because it's not saying that you shouldn't have treasure. It's not saying that you shouldn't have places where you're spending money. It's that where you spend your money is what matters in the long run. When you open up your pocketbook or your checkbook or your bank account and you look down at all of the line items, are you spending all of your money on temporary things that are going to fade away just like the moths and just as quickly as, uh, the flower in the field? Or are you taking money, treasures, and investing it into something that's going to give you eternal value? That's why it's important for you to invest in your relationship. Every time you spend money to go and be alone with your spouse, right? And again, it's not a lot of money, but every penny that you spend investing in your marriage is a money well spent because it's storing up for you treasures in heaven. It's an eternal weight of value. When you invest in this relationship and your marriage is healthy, everything else is healthy because of it. Your career thrives, your children thrive, your community is better for it. And so investing in your relationship should not be an afterthought. It should not be like at the end of the day, we have a few pennies left. Let's think about doing something for our marriage. It should be intentional. And, I'm very guilty of this. And Victoria and I have had several come to Jesus conversations about this. If you don't know what that means here in the South, come to Jesus means like we had a real tough
Intense
conversation. Yeah,
conversation. Yeah.
intense fellowship, so to speak, about me being so picky and analytical about everything that I plan. Really, it can be a problem. It's also a gift because I'm a planner. That's been a part of my career, planning events, that sort of thing. And being so intensely focused on all of the minute details has served me well. But when it comes to my relationship, it tends to overcomplicate things because Victoria, her personality and her desires, she doesn't require extravagance. She wants simplicity. She wants time. She wants face to face time. She wants to do things that are in nature and basically free, right? Yet I want to do these extravagant things for her. And oftentimes, when we don't have the means or when I don't have the time to adequately plan, I'll put it off and put it off and put it off until we look at our calendar and say, we haven't had a date night or quality time together in months, if not longer. And then it becomes really evident as to why we're arguing or why we are having so many little bitty issues that are cropping up in our relationship. It's because we haven't had that dedicated time with one another. I liken it to text messages, right? A relationship can only survive so long on text messages. Those who are on dating apps, the first thing I recommend that they do is to get off those dating apps as quickly as possible once you've made a connection. Don't spend more than 24 to 48 hours messaging back and forth with someone. Get on the phone, get on FaceTime, get in front of them on a coffee date as soon as you can. And I'm saying this because I know single people listen to our podcast as well. But you've got to get off of the text messages because so much can be misinterpreted. And there's only so much that you can express on text messages. So you need that quality face to face time to see whether or not this relationship is going to work. In the same way, in your marriage, you can't just have a marriage that's a text message relationship. That the only time that you're talking to one another is going back and forth on your phones. You have to have face time with your spouse.
You brought up a good point about spending quality time together is important because quality time can mean something different for everybody. I
Yes.
remember we counseled this couple and it was like this aha moment. It was like it didn't make sense before, but now it does. So this couple, both of their love languages were quality time. We're like, oh, this is easy.
Yeah, so you would think.
You would think that this is just simple. You both like to spend time together. But the funny thing is that once we started diving into it, her quality time was like sitting and having pillow talk and have the full on divided attention.
Sitting with
And
coffee or tea and
yeah, and
face to
just it
face.
was just intense. And he was completely opposite. Like he loved to watch sports. He liked to be, watching movies or whatever. He liked to relax because he was like in the retirement stage. And that was quality time for him. So it was like
The
such
fact
a
that his spouse would dedicate her time to sit with him, even though she may not be interested in those movies or
yeah.
sports or whatever, but her presence is what he wanted. That she wasn't off doing something else, that she was sitting next to him, hand on hand, snuggled up to one another. That was quality to him.
Yeah, so like what Ryan was saying, for the longest time until he understood me that I don't need all those things. I don't need luxurious, date nights where we eat fancy foods, or I mean, it's all those things are nice, but like to me, I personally love nature. I like outdoors. I like being active. I like doing those things. And until it registered and he didn't have to like have that assumption about me that I needed all of this, that it kind of clicked, "Oh, okay, this is what she needed." And actually it was liberating because then you didn't feel that pressure of constantly feeling like every single year, every single date had to be something more glamorous and something more luxurious, because when you really truly know the heart of the person, it's a lot easier to say, "Oh, this person actually doesn't like all this. They actually like this." And it's just so simple, you know?
Now, unfortunately for the pocketbooks of some men out there,
It's
a lot
very
of
expensive.
some women want to be treated
Yeah,
extravagantly.
some women like gifts. Yeah.
But there is a way, even with that, to be able to maneuver things and manage things. You may not be able to go out as often, and so you have to settle in between for some other ways of connecting. And so there are definite benefits to keeping dates simple
Yeah.
and to realize that quality time doesn't mean you have to spend a lot of money. We have a lot of excuses when it comes to quality time and date nights. Let's talk about some of those excuses, right? The first thing that most couples say is, we're so busy. We don't have enough time. We've got work. We've got other commitments. We just don't have the time for date nights.
Mm.
And here's the thing that I want to tell you. If you go back to the first episode of this series, if you build your marriage on a mission, it's going to be easy to say no to things that don't align with that mission. We overcommit ourselves. We expend a lot of energy on other people's agenda and we suffer for it. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't volunteer, you shouldn't serve at church, you shouldn't give back, you shouldn't allow your kids to participate in sports. You should, but within reason. And if it's affecting your relationship, you have to understand that it's going to have long-term consequences. I see a lot of couples who they spend the adolescent years of their children's lives going to sporting events, doing all of these things. They live vicariously through their children, avoiding their marriage. And then 15, 20 years later, their kids are moved out and they realize that they're living with a stranger and they don't know if they want to be married to this person anymore, unfortunately. You don't want to find yourself at that place just because you wanted your kid to play all of the sports, right? Let them choose a sport that they're good at or an activity. Focus on that and find ways to ensure that you're carving out time for you and your spouse.
Yeah, I have to add to this, and parenting is a huge responsibility, especially when you become a parent. You recognize the weight of, not only the physical weight, but it's mental, emotional, and spiritual weight that you have to carry. But I think it's important for us to realize that if we as a spouse, as two spouses, if we get our marriage right and we can mirror that, that's the greatest gift that we can give to our children. Oftentimes we think, I need to give this to my kids because I never experienced it. And so we pour our resources and our energy and our time when our kids truly just need to see our authentic selves, and be able to see, wow, mom and dad really love each other and mom and dad are hugging and close. That to them gives security and safety. So that to them is the greatest gift that you can give. You can play sports and all that, but it still should not, be at the expense of your marriage. So making sure that you put your spouse, you know, as a priority and say, what is important for us? And let's put this on the calendar. Let's schedule this and then we'll work and add anything else that we can fit into the schedule to make sure that our kids also are able to do some of those things.
Yeah, we were talking about this recently that the American dream is not really a dream. For a lot of people, it has become a nightmare. And I don't believe that what we consider the American dream today was what our founding fathers conceived when they put together the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, which is a powerful document that I believe is rooted in a lot of faith. Certainly, any document apart from the Bible is flawed, but it's a strong document that has preserved our country. But yet here we are, these hundreds of years later, chasing after things that use a lot of energy and lead us into anxiety and depression.
Mhm.
all after trying to chase a dollar bill or trying to, like you said, make sure our kids have what we didn't have. But when we really consider our lives, even if we missed out on some of the things that we felt like were important as kids, did we really miss out? Right? I believe that the American dream is about your family moving as a team together, that it's less about individualistic goals and it's more about a collective purpose that you share with your spouse and ultimately with your kids. And that when you do something, you do it together as a family. That way, you're not off chasing one dream and they're off chasing another, but together you're doing something significant with your lives, right? As much as people love sports and any one of these activities, at the end of the day, there's a limited number of people who are going to move beyond high school football and go on to make millions of dollars in the NFL. And it's just such a fleeting dream to have. And yes, there are football players who have made significant impacts on the world and have used their influence for good, but then there is like this host of football players who have destroyed their bodies and their minds for nothing because they were chasing this idea of success. And so, this excuse that you don't have time, if you look at your calendar, you make time for what is important to you.
Mhm.
And it may not feel romantic and sexy to schedule a date night and say, we're going to be committed to this, but you have to do it. The person that married us gave us this instruction when we got married, the 777 principle. And some of you may have heard us say this before. You know, every 7 days, you need uninterrupted time with your spouse, either a date or you need at least what we call table time.
Mhm.
You need to sit uninterrupted and talk with your spouse for at least an hour or more. That's once a week, every 7 days. Every 7 weeks, it would be great if you could have 24 hours together. That means going away or sending your kids away and having 24 hours dedicated to you and your spouse to go out, have fun, take some walks, have some good conversations, cook together 24 hours every 7 weeks. And then every 7 months, take a few days, right? Like our marriage getaway, forevermore marriage getaway.
Mhm.
Take a couple days, invest in your marriage. It may cost a few $100s, but in the grand scheme of things, it's going to yield a return, you know, 100-fold. It's not even going to be quantifiable. Just investing these little things. So it's 777 every 7 days, 7 weeks, 7 months. And if you could strive towards that, then your marriage is going to be all the better for it. You may not always get it perfect. You know, your schedules don't always align, but at least you can put a marker and say, the last time we did something was on the calendar and it was 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And you could say, I know it because we wrote it down. And it's important that you write it down, that you catalog that, yes, we are making an intentional investment into our relationship. Another excuse that couples use is the fact that they have kids, right? We've got kids, maybe when the kids are older, we don't have a sitter, and there's so many reasons why our kids have stolen all of our attention, leaving no room for our spouse, and especially not a date night. But guess what? You can find reliable babysitters. You could ask family members to help with childcare. You could, we were talking about this earlier with each other. You could find another couple in your church, people that you're friends with in your community. Do you know anybody in your friend group right now who has kids similar age to you? What if you went to them and said, hey, we want to invest in our marriage. Would you like to invest in yours? The first Friday of the month, we'll take all of the kids for 3 hours and you go. The last Friday of the month, you take the kids for 3 hours and we'll go somewhere. 3 hours is not long, but it's enough to have a meal, take
Mhm.
a quick walk, have some good conversation, and then you've done trade it off. Again, it may not be able to be accommodated every single month, but it's important. And then also, you're having quality time with your kids, and they can expect, wow, on the first and the last Friday of every single month, we're going to hang out with friends and we're going to do something as a
Different,
family.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? As you said that 3 hours may not be long. For parents out there, 3 hours is a long time, so we appreciate anything.
When you get in your car after dropping your kids off,
Just the silence,
it's
yeah.
just and then all of a sudden, a few hours in, you're starting to miss them.
Yeah.
And you're like, "I was just screaming at them a few hours ago, and yet I miss their little faces."
It's an
Well,
interesting dynamic,
Ano
parenting.
another excuse that couples use is financial constraints. Date nights are expensive. We can't afford to go out regularly. Well, guess what? You can embrace creativity. Limitations give birth to the greatest levels of creativity. Most people don't view those things within the same category, right? They say, well, how can I be creative if there are limitations? As a creative, I can tell you that it's a lot easier for me to drum up ideas for something if I put a boundary around what I'm trying to create. This specific topic, this specific event, this conference, this theme, this scripture. It sparks inspiration for a song, right? If someone gives me, a topic, I can write a song within a couple of hours, if not sooner. But if somebody says, write a song about anything, now you got me in a headspin. What am I going to write about? I could write about a million different things. Creativity is interesting like that. You've got to set parameters in order to nudge the creativity to the surface. That's a long way of saying is the more restraints you have on yourself, the more creative you can become. The less money you have, the more creative you can become with setting up a picnic in the backyard after the kids go to sleep, string some lights, do a little nighttime picnic, right?
Charcuterie
A
boards,
charcuterie
I
board in your
mean,
bedroom floor, sitting and watching your favorite show together, or just simply having a cup of tea at the end of the night across the table from your spouse, talking about the things that matter most.
I think as we age, I think we learn to appreciate the little things of like seeing the birds and walking out in the nature and just doing the little things. I've seen couples that have really created this routine where they started taking walks every day, like either in the morning or in the evening. And it's not only good for the health, but they feel that instant connection because they're able to have conversation while actually exercising, getting fresh air. So it doesn't have to be expensive and always feel like we have to go on these extravagant dates. Now, I would say that you also can't be like monotone or what am I saying? Boring, where you feel like every time it's date night or you spend time together, it's the same thing. So try to be creative and do things differently so that your spouse feels like, okay, they're thinking about me. It's not just, "Oh, yeah, we're doing a date night, the same old," and
Yeah.
just like it feels like it doesn't give any kind of creativity anyway.
And if you're doing something like exchanging babysitting with a friend of yours, right, who also have kids, you don't have to go out to eat. You can go pick up the ingredients, make a meal together at home. When is the last time you cooked something that you love to eat that you also didn't have to make a second or third meal for your kids, right? Picky eaters. Focus on a nice meal that you can make at home that's less expensive. Or hey, go downtown and walk and grab a corn dog or something.
Yeah.
And not that that's the healthiest of choice. Victoria's like, "A corn dog."
Uh-uh.
But, you know, it's simple. You're with your spouse. You don't have to overcomplicate it. It doesn't have to be overly expensive.
It's a little habit that you create that but it helps with the connection. It helps you to have that touch point with your spouse throughout the weeks and throughout the months versus feeling like, well, if we can't make this happen because we financially can't do it, then we're just not going to do it. And then over time you're going to see that you are drifting apart.
And again, assess your finances and say, "Can we
Adjust them.
yeah, can
Yeah.
we get $50 somewhere in our budget every single month?" And there we have $50 as a budget. Let's get creative. What can we do with $50? Well, we can do a lot with $50. You can get very creative. Another excuse that couples have is they have a lack of energy. By the time we finish all of our daily responsibilities, we're too tired to go out for a date or even sit there and talk with one another. And I get that. So if what we just said to you isn't reasonable, if you're exhausted, depending on your job and your responsibilities, then use time with your spouse as an opportunity to energize and recharge.
Hey, sometimes tired sex is the best kind of sex.
That's true. And hey, you could get energized there for sure.
Or be put to sleep
But what
afterwards.
I'm referring to is getting a little bit more strategic, right? So, stealing a little extra time in the morning, right? Waking up 30 minutes in advance and saying, we're going to go and sit out on the front porch with our cup of coffee before the kids wake up. And we're just going to sit and we're going to talk. And that way, you've started your day energized, right?
Mhm.
By the way, all of these things that we're saying too can be applied to your relationship with Jesus. Most people use all of these same excuses as
Yeah.
to why they're not closer to God, right? So apply it where you want to. But when it comes to having the energy, plan your date nights earlier in the day or on the weekends when you have more energy, or prioritize it in the middle of the week to say, I'm going to stop by your work and we're going to eat lunch together, right? The school is taking care of childcare. So let's take advantage of the school's childcare. I can carve out 30 minutes to an hour. If you want to make sure you have that full hour, then bring your lunch and just eat it together. What can you do to take the opportunity of earlier times in the day to use that date to energize you for the rest of your day? Whether it's early in the morning, now you're encouraged to have the best day you possibly can, or in the middle of the day, now you can finish strong. So there's an answer if you're willing to look for it. And one of the things Victoria said is a lot of people said, oh, it's routine and monotonous. We get stuck and date nights feel repetitive and unexciting. Well, guess what? You can spice up the routine, break out of the monotonous routine. And one of the things I tell to women all the time is your husband doesn't have to be the only one who plans a date night. You can plan one too. And if he's willing, and men can be willing to do a lot of things. Here's a little hint, ladies. You could say, I'm going to take you to such and such. And it might be the most girly thing. You might say, I want to go walk in our local museum and look at the paintings on the wall. And for him, that's like nails on a chalkboard. But if you come in and whisper in his ear and you go get a little negligee or something and you lay it on the bed and you come and say, let's go to this museum and look around. And when we get back, we can create our own art. I can guarantee you, ladies, he'll
And I
go
was like,
and do the monotonous thing with you. Trust me,
that was like a dad joke
it
to
was
the
a dad
ninth
joke.
degree.
Hey, all the men who may be listening to this podcast out there are saying amen. For men, we're very simple creatures, right? Women, back to the point I'm making, you can plan a date in as much as he can, right? You shouldn't be planning all of them. He shouldn't be planning all of them. Or here's a novel idea. Why don't you plan dates for each other with each other in mind? So you plan a date that you know he's going to like. Go see an action movie, go to a sports game, go to Top Golf or something like that. And you would never want to do something like that, maybe. And then men do the same for her. If she likes romantic, gushy movies, go see a romantic movie with her. If she likes museums, if she likes the plays or whatever, go do something that you wouldn't necessarily want to do, but she does. And for her, that's going to equal quality time, much like that example of a couple that we counseled that Victoria gave earlier.
And you'll be surprised. Many couples would say things like, I never thought that I would actually enjoy it, but now I actually enjoy it because I get to spend time with my spouse, but I actually have learned to appreciate why my spouse actually enjoys doing whatever they're doing.
You get to see why it is that they light up.
Yeah.
They come alive in certain environments. So this is very good. But guess what? You don't have any excuse as to why you're not able to be intentional with the quality time you're spending with your spouse, because we've given you the best opportunity, and that is our Forevermore Marriage Getaway. September 1st and 2nd here in Greenville, South Carolina at the Heartness Hotel, or Hotel Heartness, however you say it. You don't want to miss it. Go to forevermoregetaway.com and register now while we still have space. I know this is the first episode that we're announcing this on, but we're praying that it's going to be filled up and it's going to be extraordinary time. So pray for us as we're making this step of faith And guess what? If you want to come, you can register, but also if you want to pay it forward, you can do that as well. If you say, I've got extra resources and I want to make sure that someone who does not have is able to enjoy it as well, you can make a donation. Go to moremostforever.com and make a donation. One time, you can give enough to cover someone, right? Just give the $279 and we'll see, and we'll allocate that and sponsor a couple. Or you can become a monthly partner of any amount, $25, $50 or more, to make sure that we are able to continue our mission of empowering individuals to discover their purpose, date well, and have thriving marriages that reflect the glory of God and the culture of the kingdom of heaven. I know that's a mouthful right there, but forevermoregetaway.com is your first spot. Register, and then moremostforever.com. We want you to give.
Yes, we're so excited to spend time with you, quality time with you guys. So be sure to sign up at the website and we will see you guys there.
All right. This has been Needed Conversations. Hey, and drop us a comment, text us, DM us, let us know that you're coming to the event. We'll be excited to find out. We'll see you on the next episode of Needed Conversations.